6 months after the tense first contact, the UES Thunderchill glided into position alongside 3 Morin vessels. From the observation deck, Captain Juwu watched as the ships performed a synchronized maneuver, their engines pulsing with blue-white energy against the backdrop of space. Still hard to believe, isn't it? Commander Dongyan said as he joined her at the viewport. Juwu nodded, her eyes tracking the Morin flagship, a vessel that once had its weapons trained on them, but now served as their partner in the newly established neutral zone. The joint exercises are proceeding ahead of schedule, she noted. The Morin pilots have adapted to our formation patterns faster than expected. They're quick learners, Dongyan agreed. Though I think Commander Day nearly had a heart attack when our pilots demonstrated those high-G combat maneuvers yesterday. Juwu laughed softly. The Morin approach to space travel had always emphasized elegance and efficiency. The aggressive, sometimes seemingly reckless human tactics had been a shock to their alien allies. A soft chime announced a visitor. The door slid open to reveal Commander Day, his tall form bowing slightly to enter the human doorway. Captain Juwu, he greeted her, touching his 4-fingered hand to his chest in the Morin gesture of respect. Your crew continues to impress. The defensive drills today were most enlightening. Your ships performed admirably as well, Juwu replied. The shield harmonization technology you've shared has improved our defensive capabilities by nearly 40%. They moved to a conference table where a holographic display showed the day's exercises. Both human and Morin vessels moved through complex patterns, testing each other's capabilities while sharing tactical data. I've received word from the Concord Council, Dai said, his large eyes blinking slowly. They've approved the preliminary trade agreement. Earth will receive rights to establish outposts in 2 star systems within Concord space. Juwu smiled. And in return, Earth will share our innovations in adaptive computing and defensive countermeasures. A fair exchange, I think. More than fair, Dai admitted. Your AI technologies alone are worth several star systems, the way your Girin system adapted to our scan. I've never seen anything like it. The Concord races tend to specialize in specific technological paths. Humans seem to innovate in all directions at once. Necessity, Dongyan explained. When you spend thousands of years fighting yourselves, you learn to adapt quickly or perish. Day nodded thoughtfully. A harsh evolution, but effective. The Morin achieved peace thousands of years ago, but I now see it came at a cost. We became predictable, homogeneous in our thinking. A junior officer entered, presenting refreshments suitable for both human and Morin biology, before discreetly withdrawing. The 3 leaders continued their discussion, reviewing plans for the future of human-Morin relations. There are still many in the Concord who fear humanity's warrior nature, Dai admitted. Some advisory councils believe integrating humans into galactic society is too risky. And there are humans who worry about losing our independence to a galactic coalition. Juwu countered. Trust takes time. Day made a gesture of agreement. Yet here we are, once on the brink of combat, now planning joint colonies and technology exchanges. The conversation was interrupted as Girin's holographic form appeared above the table. Captain, the Morin education delegation has arrived. 30 students from their academy are ready to begin their exchange program with our engineering staff. Thank you, Girin. Please have Lieutenant Toho escort them aboard. After the AI disappeared, Day's expression turned serious. I've often reflected on our first meeting, Captain. If you had opened fire when we raised our defenses, or if we had proceeded with our interdiction protocol. But we didn't, Juwu said simply. Both of us chose to take a risk on understanding rather than fear. Dong Hyun raised his cup in a toast. To misunderstandings that lead to friendship. The 3 leaders touched their cups together. Through the viewport, they could see a shuttle departing the Morin flagship, carrying the first group of Morin students eager to learn human engineering techniques. Simultaneously, a human transport was preparing to ferry Earth scientists to study Morin propulsion technology. You know, Daz said, Watching the shuttles cross paths, there's an old Morin saying, "The greatest discoveries often begin with the greatest confusion." Juwu smiled. "We have a similar expression. Blessed are the mistakes that lead to truth." As they continued planning the integration of humanity into the wider galactic community, both leaders understood something profound had been achieved. The Morin had discovered that sometimes crude appearance concealed brilliant innovation, while humans had learned that not every advanced civilization needed to be feared. What had begun with an invasive scan and a defensive countermeasure had evolved into something neither species could have predicted, the foundation of a lasting alliance that would reshape the future of the galaxy. The next 12 hours aboard the Thunderchild were the most tense in Captain Juwu's career. The initial text exchanges with the alien vessel had evolved into simple audio transmissions. The Morin language was unlike anything humans had ever encountered, musical and flowing, but their translation algorithms were gradually making sense of it. "Captain, I've processed enough of their language to make a significant discovery," Jiren announced. The AI's holographic form pulsed with excitement. The Morin aren't a military expedition. They're administrators of something called the Galactic Concord, a trading coalition of 17 spacefaring species. Juwu leaned forward in her chair. "A trading coalition, not an empire." "No, Captain. Based on the data they've shared, they haven't engaged in warfare for over 3,000 years. Their expansion has been entirely peaceful." Commander Dongyun shook his head in amazement. "No wonder they reacted so strongly to our military history. We must have looked like barbarians to them." The main screen displayed information the Morin had shared. Images of diverse alien species working together, massive space stations serving as trading hubs, and ships much like the one they now faced serving as diplomatic vessels. "They're administrators, not conquerors," Juwu said softly. "And we nearly started a war with them." Lieutenant Teho looked up from his console. "Captain, they're requesting to send a delegation aboard our ship. 3 representatives." A heavy silence fell over the bridge. No human had ever met an alien face to face. The implications were enormous. "What's your assessment, Jiren?" Juwu asked. "The risk appears minimal," the AI responded. "Their biological scans show no pathogens dangerous to humans. Their weapons technology, while advanced, has remained powered down since communications were established." Juwu tapped her fingers against the arm of her chair, weighing the historic decision before her. "Prepare the conference room. Full diplomatic protocols. And notify Earth Command of our situation." Commander Day adjusted his ceremonial collar nervously as the transport pod carried him and 2 colleagues toward the human vessel. The decision to board the alien ship had not been an easy one, but the potential benefits outweighed the risks. "Our scans underestimated them," said Science Officer Jin, reviewing data on her tablet. "Their technology appears primitive, yet they managed to reverse engineer our scanning beam within minutes of exposure." "Adaptation," Day replied thoughtfully. "They've evolved differently than we have. Where the Morin developed through consensus and gradual improvement, these humans appear to thrive on challenge and conflict." The transport pod docked with a gentle thud. The 3 Morin representatives stood as the door slid open, revealing their first direct view of humans. Captain Juwu stepped forward, her hand raised in what the Morin had learned was a greeting gesture. Behind her stood several crew members, their expressions a mixture of awe and caution. "Welcome aboard the United Earth ship Thunderchild," Juwu said, her words translated by a small device at her collar. "I am Captain Juwu." Day inclined his head in the traditional Morin greeting. "I am Commander Dai of the Morin Collective. We are honored by your invitation." The humans led them to a conference room where refreshments had been prepared. For several minutes, both sides observed formal diplomatic protocols, exchanging carefully prepared statements about peaceful intentions. Then Juwu did something unexpected. She dismissed most of her staff, leaving only herself and Commander Dongyun facing the 3 Morin representatives. "I believe we need to address what happened between our ships directly," she said. Our species have very different histories, which led to a dangerous misunderstanding. Day's large eyes blinked slowly. You refer to your military history. I must admit, the images you shared were disturbing to us. We didn't intend them as a threat. Juwu explained. We were trying to share who we are, our complete history, both the good and the bad. Humanity has fought itself for most of our existence, it's true. But those conflicts have shaped us, pushed us to innovate, to survive against overwhelming odds. Jin leaned forward with genuine curiosity. Your species developed in constant competition with itself, yet you've unified enough to reach the stars. How is this possible? Dongyun smiled. We're still working on the unified part, but we've learned that the same determination that makes us dangerous can also make us cooperative when facing greater challenges. As the conversation continued, both sides began to recognize something profound. Beneath their biological and cultural differences, they shared fundamental values. The Morin valued knowledge, preservation of life, and progress. So did humanity, though their paths to these values had been very different. I believe, Daz said finally, that we have much to learn from each other. Your adaptability and innovative thinking are unlike anything in the Concord, and perhaps we can offer you technologies and perspectives that would benefit Earth. Jiwoo nodded, a genuine smile spreading across her face. I think this misunderstanding might be the beginning of something remarkable for both our peoples. As the meeting continued late into the ship's night cycle, the foundations of understanding between two vastly different civilizations began to take shape, built upon the near disaster of their first encounter. Chaos erupted on the bridge of the Morin flagship as their main systems flickered with incoming data. Commander Day gripped the sides of his command chair, watching in alarm as the screens around him filled with scenes from human history. "What am I seeing?" he demanded. Officer Jin's voice was tight with tension. "The humans have somehow reversed our scanning beam. They're sending us information." The largest screen showed humans in primitive armor formations, then shifted to massive explosions that leveled entire cities. Next came images of orbital weapons platforms and space-based combat exercises. "This is clearly a threat display," growled Commander Dai, rising from his chair. "They're showing us their warfare capabilities." The Morin crew watched in horrified fascination. Their species had evolved beyond internal conflict thousands of years ago. The Morin collective expanded through diplomacy and trade, not conquest. The raw violence in these human historical records was shocking to their sensibilities. "They fight each other this way?" asked a young navigation officer, her face pale. Jin nodded grimly. "According to these records, they've been at war with themselves throughout their entire history. They've survived multiple near-extinction events caused by their own weapons." Day paced the bridge, his mind racing. "They detected our scan and responded with this catalog of destruction. The message is clear. They're warning us not to engage them." "Sir," called Officer Hyun from his station, "the human vessel is activating its defense systems. Energy readings indicate shield deployment." Day's expression hardened. "They're preparing for combat. Raise our shields and power auxiliary weapons. Prepare for interdiction protocol." As the Morin vessel hummed with defensive energy, technicians rushed to purge the human data from their systems. The screens continued to display disturbing images, humans fighting in every environment imaginable, from deep oceans to orbital platforms. A species that evolves through constant warfare would develop unique tactical approaches, Dai muttered. "We must be cautious." Aboard the Thunderchild, Captain Juwu frowned at the alien ship's response. Their defensive posture was unmistakable. "They've raised some kind of energy barrier," Lieutenant Teho reported. "Similar to our shields, but far more sophisticated. They're also charging weapons systems," added Commander Dongyun, his voice grim. Juwu felt a sinking sensation in her stomach. "They've completely misinterpreted our message. We were trying to educate them about humanity, not threaten them." "Captain," said Jiren, the ship's eye, "I've analyzed the data exchange. There appears to be a fundamental cultural misunderstanding. The Morin, as they call themselves in the limited data we received, are a unified species with no recent history of internal warfare. Juwu's eyes widened with understanding. You mean they don't fight among themselves? Precisely. They appear to have evolved beyond internal conflict thousands of years ago. Our historical records of human warfare likely appear barbaric and threatening to them. Dong Yun shook his head in disbelief. So our attempt to show them our resilience and technological evolution was interpreted as a threat display. Juwu finished. We need to clear this up immediately. Prepare a new communication package. Peaceful images only. First contact protocols. Captain, warn Tahoe. They're moving into what appears to be an attack position. The bridge crew watched tensely as the alien vessel shifted its orientation, bringing what looked like weapon ports to bear on the Thunderchild. Hold position, Juwu ordered. Do not target them. Keep shields at maximum. But I want a clear message sent. We are not hostile. On the Morin vessel, Commander Dai studied the tactical display with growing concern. The human ship remained in position, shields raised but weapons cold. They're not retreating, he noted, and they haven't targeted us yet. Sir, called Jin, they're broadcasting again. Different format this time. Text and simple images. The main screen displayed a series of peaceful images, humans working together, building cities, exploring space. The text was simple but clear, not hostile. Communication error. Request die adulgui. Dai hesitated, uncertainty crossing his features. Could this be a deception? Their weapons remain powered down, reported Hyun. They could have fired already if that was their intention. The bridge fell silent as Dai considered their options. The Morin prided themselves on peaceful expansion, yet here they were, on the brink of combat with a new species due to a misunderstanding. What if we've made a terrible error? He finally said. These humans sent us their history, violent as it is, as information, not necessarily as a threat. Jin looked up from her console. Sir, they're opening all communication channels. They appear to be genuinely attempting to establish dialogue. Dai took a deep breath, his four-fingered hand hovering over the command console. The next decision could determine the fate of two species. Lower shields to 50% as a show of good faith, he finally ordered. Prepare a response package with our own historical overview, and open a direct communication channel. As both ships faced each other in the emptiness of space, the first tentative steps toward mutual understanding began to replace the dangerous misunderstanding that had nearly led to conflict. Captain Juwu stood on the bridge of the UES Thunderchild, her eyes fixed on the main display showing the alien vessel. The ship was beautiful, sleek and elegant where human ships were bulky and practical. Its hull shimmered with an almost pearl-like finish, suggesting materials far beyond Earth's technological capabilities. Captain, we've detected an energy pattern directed at our ship, reported Lieutenant Tahoe, the Thunderchild's sensor officer. His voice remained calm, but his fingers tightened on the edge of his console. Nature of the pattern? Juwu asked, keeping her voice steady for the benefit of her crew. It appears to be a scanning beam, ma'am. Very sophisticated. It's penetrating our outer hull and mapping our internal systems. The bridge fell silent. This was humanity's first confirmed contact with an alien civilization, and it had begun with the equivalent of breaking and entering. Gurin, what's your assessment? Juwu asked the ship's AI defense system. A holographic representation of Jiren, appearing as a simple blue sphere, materialized beside her chair. The scan is highly invasive, Captain. They are accessing information about our weapons systems, propulsion, and even crew complement. Their technology is significantly advanced beyond our own. Juwu's jaw tightened. Humanity had spread throughout the solar system, but hadn't yet ventured to other stars. The Thunderchild was the most advanced warship Earth had ever built, but it was clear they were outclassed by the alien vessel. Options, she asked. Standard procedure would be to power weapons and raise shields, her first officer, Commander Dongyan, suggested. Jiwoo shook her head slightly. That could be interpreted as aggression. We don't know their intentions yet. Captain, Jiren interjected, I have identified a vulnerability in their scanning technology. Their system creates a temporary data pathway to transmit information back to their vessel. Jiwoo raised an eyebrow. You're saying their scan is essentially a two-way street? Precisely. With your authorization, I could implement Protocol Echo. Several officers exchanged glances. Protocol Echo was a defensive countermeasure designed to overwhelm enemy systems with data, effectively turning their own connection against them. Jiwoo considered for a moment. This wasn't a human adversary. The consequences of misunderstanding could be catastrophic, but allowing an unknown alien force to freely access their systems seemed equally dangerous. What data would we send? She asked. I recommend a carefully curated package, Jiren replied. Information about Earth's history, culture, and yes, our military capabilities. Not detailed technical specifications, but enough to demonstrate that we are not to be underestimated. Jiwoo drummed her fingers against the arm of her chair. Do it. But be clear, this is a defensive response, not an attack. Initiating Protocol Echo, Jiren confirmed. On the screens around the bridge, crew members watched as Jiren executed the countermeasure. The alien scan, visible as a pulsing line of energy connecting the two ships, suddenly changed color, from a cool blue to a vibrant red. Their scan is now carrying our data package, Taiho reported. The connection is holding steady. What exactly are we sending them? Asked Dongyan. Jiren displayed examples on a nearby screen. Images of Earth's diverse environments and peoples, brief historical summaries, and then more pointed selections, Roman battle formations, World War I footage, nuclear tests, modern space combat exercises. The images weren't explicitly threatening, but they sent a clear message. Humans understood warfare on a fundamental level. They're trying to break the connection, Taiho announced. Their systems are working to sever the link. Let them, Jiwoo said. We've made our point. The energy beam connecting the ships flickered and disappeared. For several tense moments, nothing happened. The alien vessel remained in position, dark and silent. Captain, they're powering up their systems, Taiho reported urgently. Energy readings are spiking across their hull. Defensive posture, Jiwoo ordered. Shields up, but do not target weapons. I want to know what they're doing, but we don't escalate unless they do. The Thunderchild's shield generators hummed to life, creating a barely visible energy field around the massive warship. The crew watched anxiously as the alien vessel's hull began to glow with increasing energy. Captain, Jiren said, I've analyzed their response pattern. They appear to have misinterpreted our countermeasure as a form of attack or threat display. Jiwoo's eyes narrowed as she watched the alien ship. A cultural misunderstanding could turn this historic moment into a tragedy. Open all communication channels, she ordered. Let's try something more direct before this gets out of hand. As the Thunderchild's communications array activated, the alien vessel suddenly shifted position, turning its sleek bow directly toward the human warship in what could only be interpreted as a confrontational stance. The first interspecies standoff in human history had begun. The sleek Moran scout vessel glided through the darkness of space, its sensors sweeping methodically across the void. Commander Dai stood on the bridge, his tall frame rigid with discipline, as he studied the holographic displays surrounding him. Commander, we've detected an unknown vessel at the edge of our territory, reported Officer Hyun, his fingers dancing across the control panel. Dai leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Classification. Preliminary scans indicate it's a warship, sir. Quite large, but technologically primitive compared to our standards. The commander stroked his chin thoughtfully. Origin. A species calling themselves humans. We have no prior contact records. The bridge crew exchanged curious glances. First contact scenarios were rare and followed strict protocols in the Morin Collective. Their civilization had charted most of this sector of the galaxy, and unregistered spacefaring species were unusual. "Bring up visual," Dad ordered. The main screen flickered to life, displaying a massive vessel that seemed almost crude compared to the elegant lines of Morin ships. Its hull was angular and reinforced, with visible weapon ports and what appeared to be thick armor plating. It moved with purpose rather than grace. "How primitive is their technology?" Day asked. Officer Jin, the science specialist, consulted her readings. "Their propulsion system uses nuclear fusion, efficient, but outdated by our standards. Hull materials are primarily metal alloys. Nothing that suggests quantum engineering or gravity manipulation." Day nodded, relaxing slightly. The Morin had encountered many young species during their expansion. Most were welcomed into the collective after proper introduction and cultural exchange. This appeared to be another such case, a developing civilization taking its first steps into the wider galaxy. Standard first contact protocols. "Perform a deep scan to assess technological capabilities and threat level," he ordered. "We need a complete understanding before we make ourselves known." Jin activated the Morin's powerful scanning array. The invisible beams reached out across space, penetrating the human vessel's hull to catalog its systems, weapons, and technology. The results began filtering back almost immediately, and Jin's expression shifted from professional detachment to confusion. "Sir, something's not right with these readings." Day moved to her station. "Explain." "Their power core. It's using principles I don't recognize. It's not antimatter or zero-point energy, but it's producing output levels that shouldn't be possible with fusion technology." The commander frowned. "Could our readings be incorrect?" "No, sir. But there's more. Their weapon systems. They're using kinetic projectiles and directed energy weapons. Yes, but there are subsystems operating on principles that don't match any known collective weapon design." Officer Han suddenly straightened in his chair. "Commander, their computer systems are responding to our scan." "That's impossible," Jin said. "Our scanning technology is passive and undetectable." Han's fingers flew across his console. "They've not only detected our scan, but they're actively tracking the signal back to us. They've somehow managed to establish a connection to our scanning array." Day's face darkened. "Shut it down. Immediately." "I'm trying, sir, but—" Ham's words cut short as his screen flashed with warning symbols. "They've created some kind of feedback loop. Our scanning systems are locked." The main view screen suddenly flickered, displaying strange symbols and images, human writing and diagrams flowing into their system through the very scanning beams they had sent out. "What is happening?" Dad demanded. Jin stared at her readouts in disbelief. "They're sending data back through our scan. It's like they turned our scanner into a two-way communication device. That should be technologically impossible for them." The bridge lights dimmed momentarily as the ship's systems struggled to process the incoming data flood. "These aren't random transmissions," Hyun reported. "They appear to be sending us specific information. Military information." The screen displayed images of human warfare, vehicles moving across landscapes, explosions, sophisticated-looking weapons, and strategic formations. "Is this a threat?" asked the communications officer. Day didn't answer immediately, his eyes fixed on the screen. The humans weren't just defending against their scan. They were responding with a calculated message. "We see you, and we are prepared." "Cut all connections," Day finally ordered. "Raise shields and prepare for possible hostile action." As the Morin crew scrambled to comply, Day couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. They had grossly underestimated these humans. What had begun as a routine reconnaissance of a supposedly primitive species had revealed something far more complex and potentially dangerous. On his command screen, a final image appeared before the connection was severed. The human ship turning to face them directly, its weapons ports beginning to glow with energy. The first contact had not gone as planned.